All right, Full-Time Hustle. So here's the deal. We have a huge, huge treat for you today.
Yes, we do.
On the podcast is the one and only Donavan Janus.
I'm pretty pumped about this.
I am too. And I definitely tend to do this when I interview people. I sort of hear things that I didn't know, or things that I wasn't aware of from their personal story, and I kind of end up sitting here going like, "Oh wow. I hate that." I know that's like the Owen Wilson thing to do.
Well, that's why I had you interview, because that's all I would be able to say.
Yeah, I mean,
like, that's amazing.
He really is a really remarkable Let me try that again. He's a very remarkable guy. He's very smart. He's super innovative. He's the type of person who he sees like a hole in the market, and he's like, we can use this to help people. Like, there's just no other way to say it. Like, he saw a need in the industry as it relates to client management. And
yeah, he's actually the founder and CEO of 17 Hats, which is the client management software that we use. Like, we use it every single day in our business. And I mean, it is a lifesaver. It's actually helped us grow our business over the years, because we can do it on a larger scale than what we were doing with paper contracts and, doing all the bookkeeping and everything ourselves. And he created that.
He did. I think he's been able to see what the photography industry has done over the past 15 years, and just sort of witnessed this revolution of how we've gone from, film and moved over to digital, and how do we respond to that, and how do we handle that? And he's just sort of been one of the guys in that whole situation saying, hey, there's a way to do this. There's an efficient, effective way to do this.
Yes, bridging the gap, I feel, between kind of a solopreneur and moving into the next arena of, we're all small businesses in that arena, but there were so many things that I felt early on in our business that, like, I can't afford to pay somebody to handle all this stuff, to handle our contracts, and I don't know how to do it online, and I didn't want to pay for 17 different subscriptions to things, and so when 17 Hats came out, it did hit a niche in the photographer market. And then, of course, they've gone far beyond that now and work with so many different fields of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're not going to spoil it for you. We're going to jump right into this podcast. I hope you guys enjoy.
Hey, Josh.
What?
How would you like to win an Amazon gift card?
I would love to win an Amazon gift card.
Well, you can't, but our listeners can.
Why are you just throwing that in my face? That is not funny.
Okay. But it's a $50 gift card. All right, so it's worth it.
How do I win?
Okay, well, you can enter. There's 2 ways to enter.
I'm entering this. Okay, I'm not going to win.
You're not going to win. What you need to do to enter, and all of our listeners can do this, rate and review us on iTunes, and it's free to do. And then the other thing is tag us on Instagram and tag 2 friends. It could either be in an Insta story or in a post, but you need to tag us and tag 2 friends who you think will be interested in the podcast. And then it also has to be public so we can actually see it.
Okay, so what are the 2 ways again?
All right, rate and review us on iTunes.
Okay, rate and review us.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And then rating is like the little like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars.
Yep.
And the review means you're writing words.
Perfect. Okay.
Yep. And or tag us on Instagram and tag 2 friends that you think would love Full-Time Hustle.
Nice. All right. I'm on
Insta stories count too.
Killer.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is going to go for a week. So it goes until Wednesday the 20th, March 20th.
Nice.
So you need to have it. That is the day that at midnight is when it will close, and then we'll announce it later that weekend.
Great. You're listening to the Full-Time Hustle Podcast, an audio resource about life and business. Geared towards the creative entrepreneur, Full-Time Hustle is all about sharing time-tested methods and tips about everything small business related. From sales and marketing, all the way to accounting and client interaction, Full-Time Hustle covers everything you want to know about how to get things done. Turn your side hustle into a full-time hustle. For more resources, visit us online at fulltimehustle.net. Today's episode is brought to you in part by 17 Hats. 17 Hats is the premier online-based small business management software that does everything from invoicing to books to even keeping track of your contracts. Do what you do best and let 17 Hats do the rest. To get 10% off your first subscription, visit 17hats.com/card/full-time hustle. That's 17hats.com/card/full-time hustle for a free 17-day trial and 10% off your first subscription. Or simply apply the coupon full-time hustle in your account settings. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show. All right, so on the show today, we have the founder and CEO of 17 Hats, Donavan Janus. Welcome to the show, Donovan.
Thank you, Josh. Pleasure
Thank you so much for doing this. We are really, really excited to have you here. I know that you're very busy. I know it's a big deal to break away for a little while, so we really appreciate it. If you're joining us today and this is your first time listening to the podcast, this is a podcast that's dedicated to helping small business owners. And if you don't know who 17 Hats is, I would strongly encourage you to jump online, go to Google, type in 17 Hats and go to their website, 17hats.com. It's really fantastic. We feel like it is the premier solution for small businesses, especially of a creative nature, to be able to manage all of your contacts. It does invoicing. It keeps up with contracts, and we're really kind of scratching the surface with that. But Donovan is the founder of 17 Hats, and we're going to talk to him today about what he has to say about small businesses and entrepreneurship and all that stuff as it relates to being as successful as you can possibly be. So, when we signed up in 2014 is when we started. You guys started in October, and we signed up on November 4th.
Okay, great.
And the reason that we signed up immediately is because we had been looking for a way to send online contracts and invoices. Up to that point, we were still using paper, we were getting checks, we were getting cash, and that is okay for a while, but our business really couldn't grow without having something online because it was too overwhelming to send out paper contracts and make copies and deposit checks manually. It was really, really difficult. And so 17 Hats streamlined all that for us and helped us scale our business and give our clients a better experience. And that's what's really important. Also, it's very user-friendly. They're always working on new features, which means, when we recommend something, we know that the crew at 17 Hats takes it to heart. And if enough people want that feature, it usually happens, and we've seen that happen from time to time. So I'm sure you're going to hear more about that, but we just couldn't say enough positive things about 17 Hats and the impact that it's had on our business. So Donovan, you were the man that got the ball rolling with this. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your life? We'd love to get to know who you are.
Yeah. So as you can tell from my accent, I'm not from around here.
It's subtle. It's subtle, yeah.
I've been trying to get rid of it for 18 years now. I always hate it when people can pick out that I'm actually from the Netherlands.
I feel that way because I'm from the South, and people are like, "Man, you sure are country. You're a redneck, man. Where you from?" I'm like, "Dude, you don't even know how bad this used to be. It's gotten so much better."
Yeah, I actually did some accent reduction classes last year, which helped a little bit.
Okay.
So I was actually born in New Zealand. Then my parents decided, for reasons I will never understand, to move back to the Netherlands.
Okay.
And then was there. Always loved the US. Was always attracted to it. I would wake up in the middle of the night to watch the election results, and it was always this shining light on the top of a hill, so to speak, for me. So always wanted to move to the US.
Sure.
And I had my first job, which was a big break for me, where I learned a lot about the internet and how to make websites. That led to my first startup, which was a software company that had a range of different products that you could use to build your own website. And this was in mid-90s. It was a little ahead of its time.
Wow. Yeah, you don't even really hear. I feel like the type of site you're talking about has surged in popularity only in the past 6 to 8 years. So the fact that you guys were doing that in the 90s it's really interesting.
And it was far more limited, of course, what you could do in the 90s. So, but it was a cool way to have my first company. I think we had 5 different products that were sold in 9 different countries. That started off in the Netherlands. We were selling it in Germany, the UK, France, Italy, but also in Australia, New Zealand, and the US. And it was a cool company. It got me to the US. At one point, we were in the US for a trade show for European retailers, which is something I'll never understand. But anyway, it was in LA, so that was exciting. First time I came to the US. And we got a lot of requests from people to bring the software to the US, which we did, which was fantastic. And then
what was the? Would we know the name of the software if you said it?
No.
Okay.
If you were in the Netherlands around, it's 22 years ago already. Wow. Okay. Now I'm feeling old. So yeah, probably nobody remembers it. But yeah, it was very simply called Web. WEB with an exclamation point at the end. And then we had statistics and e-commerce and all that kind of stuff. And they were all web services, but we put them in a box, because at that point people still bought software at retail stores.
Yep.
And it's one of those things where we kind of we grew very quickly. Said we were in 9 different countries, and then when the .com bubble burst, what happened was that 4 or 5 distributors went out of business. And the problem with software at that time was that you had to build a box, you had to go through the distributor, you had to put it in the store. So when you sell a $100 product, you only got like $15 in margin at the end.
Jeez. So I know that's kind of a crazy question, but having a business like that at that time was really, really an innovative thing. And I just feel like you really have to be a forward thinker to be able to see the need for a product like that and the fact that people would use it. So like, what in the world was in your head that made you think of this great idea? Like what happened that you're like, this is useful, people will love this, and you just kind of like went forward? What?
Yeah. So I remember when I had the idea, so the very boring soccer match, sitting in the stand. So what happened was, this company I worked for, and it was a small business magazine, and it had this big website. And because it was one of the largest websites at the time, if you've been around the internet for a while, you might remember Internet Explorer 4.
Yep. I remember all the Internet Explorers.
Came out in 97. And that had something new called channels, where it had like 10 features website where it would pop up with news feeds and stuff like that.
Right.
And we were one of those platinum channels. And as a result, we got early access to Microsoft IE4, and I saw the power of what that could do. So we had just finished our channel, and Microsoft actually used that in all their presentations in Europe, I believe, as a showcase of how powerful dynamic HTML could be. So like a week later, we're sitting at a soccer match, and it's very boring. And they had these rotating, rotating banners across the field. Like, okay, I can do that in HTML, and like, okay, great if people could do it themselves. And I all got this request from people: hey, you know how to build a website? Can you build a website? Which got a little bit tiresome after a while.
Sure.
And then I started thinking, well, hold on, I just figured out all this stuff with HTML4, dynamic HTML. I think I can build a whole website editor in HTML, and that would allow it to be truly what you see is what you get, because you just built this website basically already.
Right.
And I happened to go on vacation that night, which was my first ever vacation as an employed person. And so we went to one of the Greek islands, and the entire week I was either sitting at the beach or at the pool with my notebook and basically designed the whole thing. And when you're, I think I was 19 at the time, and when you're 19, you don't really think about any of the risks. You're like, hey, this is a great idea, why not?
Right.
So I started building it, quit my job about 6 months later, and with 2 of my colleagues at the time. And we just started building it, and we just kind of figured it out as we went along. And in the end, we had over 50,000 users that were actively building websites with it. And it was a great experience. And the company didn't make it because eventually, when the .com bubble burst, 4 distributors went out of business, and they kind of killed our cash flow.
That's so crazy.
Right.
So you were like the European Wix of the 90s.
Yes. Yes. You could say that. Yes.
So crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
And then,
and that's a great lesson actually when it comes to building, companies like 17 Hats, is that you never want to be underfunded. And that's what happened with the first company, is that we took on some investment, but it was very little. We had a few investment offers. My partners wanted to go with kind of the smallest investment at the highest valuation.
Yep.
And then the problem was when we needed more money, this investor was a small investor. They were kind of tapped out, and they couldn't, kind of provide the bridge loan needed to get to the next site after those people went out of the distributors went out of business.
Sure.
And since the dot-com bubble had burst, no other investors were around at the time either. So we really should have gone, I think, with the other investor. Of course, hindsight is 2020.
Sure.
But the lesson really was there, like, don't be undercapitalized, right? And with 17 Hats, that's one of the first things we did, was once we'd proven it out, was actually get some strong investors behind us so we could actually keep building and not have to worry about, making payroll every week.
Sure.
So anyway, after that first company, it did get me to the US. Once we got into retail in the US, I moved here. So I moved to LA. Initially, it was for a year, but once you come from the Netherlands and you start to discover LA weather, it's really hard to leave.
I've heard that. I mean, it's pretty much sunny and 80 most of the year, right?
Yes,
and not a lot of rain.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
So stayed in LA. Did another company that kind of helped photographers sell their photos online. This was early 2000s, and really it was like sports photographers that shoot like high school photos, like high school football or little league or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that was a great business until about 2009, when of course, the economy had crashed, so people were spending a lot less money on those type of photos. But really, what I think was what eventually killed that type of business was two other things. The iPhone came out.
Yep.
And so now people,
so like everybody can take really high quality pictures.
Right. And then thirdly, Facebook was there. So now you could share them on Facebook. And really, the main reason of why you would buy a Little League photo was to share it with family.
Sure.
You could have that instant gratification. So, that business was still running for a long time after, but it really stopped growing in 2009.
Okay.
And we tried a bunch of different things, 2010, 2011, and that's kind of what eventually led to 17 Hats. And
okay. So and then so 17 Hats started in October 2014. We're now
we launched in October 2014. We've been working on it for about 3 years prior.
Wow.
Yeah. And went through,
that is a lot of dedication.
Yeah, and we went through a lot of challenges. We had business partnerships that didn't work out, and we tried lots of different things. And because I had the idea actually on Labor Day 2011. And what happened was that a family member had started her photography business, and as she became more and more successful, things actually got harder and harder and harder. And people typically think getting the business off the ground is the hard part.
Yeah.
But in reality, is once you have clients, that's when most people start to fall down. That's why most businesses fail really after year one. Because they cut clients, they get overwhelmed, and then things kind of collapse.
Okay, now just tell me about this for a second. Let's talk about this. You said this is your cousin, right?
It's a family member.
Okay, it's a family member. Okay, this person, are they very like administratively minded, type A personality, or are they more of like a creative and a dreamer and a designer, and like which category do they fit in?
I think this person was a good mix of both. So
okay,
was pretty organized. Was definitely a type A go-getter. However, while she was organized, she was not very efficient.
Yep.
Because everything was done on paper, didn't really think about a process. And this is what happens, what I see happening over and over again when people start a business. And I've been guilty of this myself. Even with 17 hats, this is what happened. You focus on getting your business going, you focus on getting clients, and then you get more and more clients. And because you didn't really sit down beforehand and really define that client experience, so to speak, from beginning to end, you end up juggling all these different balls, and eventually you just have too many balls.
Yeah.
And one ball starts dropping, the next one, the next one, the next one. And this is kind of what happened to her, is that she got those clients. And then at one point, she's like, you know what, I'm going to go back to teaching because this is just way too hard. I'm dealing with these contracts I have to follow up on, and invoicing and emails. And all I do at night is lay awake thinking, did I forget something? What do I have to do tomorrow? And, as I was seeing that up close, I'm like, okay, why is this still a problem? It's 2011. iPhones were pretty big already at that time.
Yep.
And I started looking like there's an app for everything, but that was really the problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. There's an app for invoice, there's an app for your contracts, there's an app for your contacts, there's an app for your bookkeeping, and none of them really work well together.
Sure.
Even if they could integrate, you need a lot of computer knowledge. And at the same time, because computers have gotten so much easier, thank you, Steve, really, for that. People don't have that same technical knowledge that they had, say, in the mid-90s. So
sure.
People would learn HTML and other things themselves. So I wanted to see what we could build that was kind of a holistic approach where you can manage the whole client lifecycle, like from when they are a lead to when they're kind of done. And so it had to have a contact area, it had to have quotes, contracts, invoicing. And then once we started kind of laying that out, we realized, okay, this is really cool because now the system knows what has happened.
Right.
It knows that when a contract has been signed, it can send out the invoice. When the invoice has been paid, it can update the bookkeeping. And then because when the next thing is due, it can even send out a reminder email automatically. And we're really kind of building this whole kind of blueprint for how to deal with a client that most businesses don't have. And it's the reason why so many businesses fail.
Yeah, well, we see it all the time. I mean, especially in our industry, because people tend to get pretty passionate about the end product, and they even get passionate about the process. But it's just like you said, you get all these clients, which means multiple clients equals multiple projects. Yeah. Multiple projects equal a tighter deadline. And when you've got a tighter deadline, that's fine. But if things aren't being ran efficiently, you get behind, and there's no faster killer of creativity than falling behind and feel like you're just kind of a slave to the machine.
Well, and now, you started your own business, but now it becomes a job.
Right.
Right. And
which is what you probably left to begin with. Like you wanted to get away from the man, quote unquote.
And the worst thing is you're your own worst boss.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. You're not going to hold yourself accountable to the things that you struggle the hardest with, typically.
Yeah. And because you do things inefficiently, you're actually creating work for you. Like I was talking to another company the other day, and he really, I think, put it in perspective for creators. Like, what you see so often, right, is that photographers, for example, wedding photographers, will go shoot a wedding, and because today it's easy to keep shooting, right, because it's free, where 20 years ago you'd have film. What they do is that they keep shooting, right? And like, I'll just call them out later in Photoshop or Lightroom. Well, by creating all these extra images, you just created more work for yourself having to call them out, rather than taking some time to make sure you only shoot the things that have a good chance of being a photo that the bride wants later on. Same when people shoot video, like they shoot everything.
I was just going to say, the videographers need to be listening right now. Keep going.
Yeah, right. And you end up with all this footage that you have to watch because there could be something in it, okay? But I think when I used to work with, with my other company, we worked with Miss Universe a long time ago. And they made sure that all the cameras were set up so every photo didn't need any color correcting or very little.
Right.
So they made it very efficient, and because of that, they could take the show, and an hour later, all the photos were online and they looked fantastic. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas these days, people like, oh, I'll fix the white balance in Lightroom. Like, yeah, okay, it's great for one photo.
Sure.
But not if you have 1,000 of them.
Right.
Right. And that's, I think, the things that, especially when people start out business, because they don't think about those things. Like, oh, of course I can just do it later. Yeah, that's true. But once you have more than one client, it's those things that keep sucking up your time. And all of a sudden, you are behind. Right. And because you're by yourself, there's really no other way to get ahead but then to work 24 hours a day. Right.
Right.
And there's this other saying that I'm sure you're familiar with, like, entrepreneurs are the only people that work 80 hours a week to avoid working 40.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard that. Now,
right.
Okay, now let me just ask you one quick thing. How do you coach entrepreneurs, whether it be, through your software or people that or whatever? Like, what advice do you give to people to not do that, to not work 80 hours a week so that they can keep their passion as their main thing?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I tell every would-be entrepreneur or existing business owner is to read this book called The E-Myth, or The E-Myth Revisited.
Yeah.
And the E stands for entrepreneur. And it's a book that was life-changing for me when I first read it, 10 years ago. And it really talks about the journey that most entrepreneurs go through. Like, we start out because we love doing something. Like,
sure.
We are passionate about what we do. And in the book, they call it the technician. Right? You can be the photographer, you can be the baker, but whatever you're doing it. Right?
Right.
You're the one in the creative process. And then the problem is you really need 3 different personalities for business. You need the entrepreneur, right? So you need to have this vision what your business is going to be. And typically, once you get started, the entrepreneur gets that personality gets ignored, right? Because you're so busy doing things. And then you need the manager that puts process in place. Well, the reality is that nobody really thinks about that process. So when you read that book, The E-Myth, he actually recommends and usually it's too late at that point, is that you really want to, sit down and figure out your process ahead of time before you start, doing everything else. Now, in reality is that by the time you read the book, you've already started.
Sure.
And you're going to be doing what I do. You start reading the book and you're going to be so frustrated with yourself because it's such common sense and you haven't done it. Right. And, I've had this experience myself. Like, okay, the business grows. This is great. What do? Like, you're getting overwhelmed. You hire somebody. Right. You end up working more and being frustrated with that person because they're not doing it right.
They're not doing it the way you would do it.
Yeah.
They're not doing it with your quality and your sense of ownership.
Yeah, right. And you get unhappy clients. You you fire them. You start doing it yourself again. Now you're even further behind, and everything just kind of piles up, and you get really overwhelmed. So when you read the book, The E-Myth, he's very much about everything comes down to having a system in place. The system is the solution. And a system, when you think about it, it's just a way of doing things.
Sure.
And training yourself to do it. Like, you can use a software system like ours, you can use the spreadsheet, you can use pen and paper. I don't really care what you use as long as you put an initial process in place. Now, once you have that in place, you obviously want to start making it as efficient as possible, and you really should be using computers and helping you on that.
This is a good idea really for any entrepreneur to do, but honestly, the people who are just starting out really honestly I feel like they may need to hear this the most, because this is like a proactive way to kind of get ahead of burnout, honestly.
Yes. Well, and we did this, what we call the business makeover, in November with our company, where we invited 10 of our users to fly out to Pasadena and really work on their businesses. And what we found is
these are your clients of
Yes.
17 Hats. Wow,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And what we really found is that the business foundation typically is not set. You don't have these processes in place. Every client has a different experience, so you don't really know where they're at. And it really comes down to not even having that process in place, but having your vision really figured out. Now, your vision will evolve over time, right? So it's actually an exercise I think you should do kind of yearly. Like, okay, what do we want? Where do we want to go? And then after a year, say, okay, is this still the case, or has it evolved? And if it has evolved, what do we have to change in our business to to make that, because once you know where you want to go, you get that clarity. That really allows you to find that process and also the right client. Like, again, often when people get started, it's like they'll take any client they want, right? And then they will make things happen for each individual client. Yes, of course I can do that. Of course I can make this change. Of course I can do that. And yes, that's great customer service, but you're not running a business properly.
Wow.
Right? Because you're going to have all these different clients. You're not having a consistent process. And eventually you start dropping the balls because every client is different. You don't know what you need to be doing. You thought, Susie needed this, but it was actually Joe. And you're unprofessional. And at that point, you could start losing those clients, which is all very avoidable if at the beginning you have, hey, I want to be a high-end video person, right? And this is the type of wedding that I want.
Right.
Now, it may be that you need to get some experience, right?
Sure.
And so you think, okay, for this year, I'm going to start with lower-end weddings, but people that do appreciate, a certain look and feel.
Right.
And they do appreciate the video. They have some budget for it, but it's not $100,000 wedding yet. That's okay, right? You do have to build yourself up to it. I mean, you can't say, this year I want to make $5 million, and you made $5,000 last year. Like, that doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
But it's very important to realize, okay, what kind of business do I want? Do I want a business that in 5 years will have a team of video people working for me, right? Or do I want a business that's a lifestyle business where it's just me and maybe one other person? Right, and it's the lifestyle that I'm looking forward to, freedom and all that, which is just as fair, if not a better business,
right,
than the other one, right? But it just having that vision really allows you to make decisions a lot easier. I think when you're a business owner, a lot of questions come your way every single day.
So this is kind of an aside to this past question, but I'm just hearing this come up. Like, what do you think, in your opinion, from what you've heard or what you've seen, like, what do you think, like, one of the biggest inhibitors is for growth as it relates to the client experience? Because I feel like with most businesses, like, if you provide this outstanding client experience, that's going to be, just a shot in the arm for most businesses to grow, because there's going to be a buzz, people are going to be talking. So a lot of people have great products, right? But I think maybe the client experience isn't there. So, like, what do you feel like is the biggest inhibitor to growth as it relates to the client experience?
Well, and I'll get on my soapbox for a little bit.
Okay.
Right? So, one of the things we talk about at 17 Hats is it's organized, systemized, grow. You can't grow unless you're organized.
Sure.
You can't be organized unless you have a system in place. Especially for 1 or 2 person businesses, there's a limited capacity of what you can do. Right, so it's important that you can kind of multitask and have lots of different spinning plates. And if you want to do that, it's important to have a good system in place for organization. Because if you want to have a good client experience, a key thing to a client experience is what? That it's consistent.
Right.
Because if you give a great experience to A and they rate to all their friends, and their friends have a bad experience, things stop very quickly right there. And I've experienced myself with creative people where even as the same client, one time it's great, the next time it's bad. You typically give them a second chance, and then sometimes it's worse or it's a little bit better. And if it's worse, you don't come back. If it's a little bit better, you try again. But eventually, it's not consistent, and
right.
That's the worst thing. Like it's actually. As a little side tangent here. So I fly back and forth between LA and Houston quite a bit, and typically I fly United because United has a hub in Houston, and because of the way our company is structured, we basically have unlimited miles on United, so it's a very easy back and forth. Once in a while the schedule doesn't match up, and I fly Spirit, and Spirit does not have a very good reputation.
Okay,
compared to United, their prices are about 1/3 cheaper. And the funny thing is, I love Spirit.
Okay.
Because it's consistent, boarding is fast. The stewardesses are nice. You don't get anything. Like, you get your seat, right?
Yep.
that you have to pay for. But it's the same experience every time. With United, I've had amazing flights, right? Especially on the LA to New York leg. Like I've had spectacular flights, and then the next time I'm on the same flight basically, and it's a horrible experience. You never know what you're going to get. As a result, I much rather fly Spirit because I have lower expectations.
Yeah.
Than fly United because I don't know what I want to get. But back to your question, really the key thing for growth, right, is knowing what to do, when to do it, right, and ideally do it in one place. And once you have a proper system in place, you're going to find yourself saving so much time that you can then also invest in, one, servicing your client properly, but also in the things that are required to grow your business, marketing, networking, etc. So, because if you don't have an organization system in place, eventually the client experience will suffer. You're overwhelmed, right? And if you're overwhelmed, you're never going to be growing. You need to have this capacity, and that capacity comes from organization. And really stupid example that I had when I was talking to Michael the other day, and I was complaining how in modern cars there's no place to put your keys anymore, right? So as a result, I'm always looking like, okay, did I put the keys in the cup holder? Did I put it under the seat? Where are they? And he says, okay, just go to Target, buy this little thing that sticks and put it on your dashboard and put your keys right there, right? And you're like, how much time do you waste a day? I'm like, well, it's probably a few minutes a day, right? And I'm the same when I leave my house. Where are my keys? He says, okay, how hard is it to put them in the same place in the counter? I'm like, yeah, it's not very hard. He says, yeah, but you have to train yourself to do it, right? And that's the key to any system, that you actually do it, right? And
that's valuable.
Right? And it's so simple. And guess what? I went home that day, right? I made sure that I put my keys in the same spot at my house, and I would easily lose 2 or 3 minutes a day, if not more, finding for my keys in the house. Same with my wallet, same with my phone, right? And this is not a very high-tech solution. It's just like put them in the same place every time. How hard is that?
But it's a system.
It's a system, right? And you start adding those things up. Like, this is a very simple example, right? And let's say it's only 3 minutes a day. Well, it's 15 minutes a week. Times 50 or 52, right? Now I'm thinking about 750 minutes a year, right?
Yeah.
That's already over 12 and a half hours.
Yeah, right? It is.
That's basically 2 work days that I'm losing every year looking for my keys.
That is so insane.
Right? And this is
I've
just a
never
simple
thought of it like that. And I mean, I don't know. That's brilliant.
And you look at your overall business, right? And there's so much opportunity to look at all the things where you're losing time like that, which by itself, it's only a few minutes here, a few minutes there. It's looking up things for a contact, like, hey, what package did they order? Well, if you don't use a proper system, right, you're going to be looking for emails. You have to open, maybe your accounting software, etc. If you don't know where things are, you're going to lose so much, even mental time. Like, okay, where did I put that, right? And just that thought saps energy. Well, you only have so much energy every day, right? So all those little things, if you're not going to eliminate all of them, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
If you can eliminate most of those, the time that you save, but also the mental energy that you save, that now gives you what you need to grow. So it does come back, as simple as it is, to putting a system in place that is consistent and organized.
Wow. That's really, really, really good advice. It's really simple, but
no, I mean, I did one of those.
I feel like people, including me, we just don't think on that simple level sometimes. I feel like sometimes we feel like we need this extravagant solution to things, when honestly, it's training ourselves to do something different. It's just as simple as putting our keys in a box.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. So, okay, I think I already know the answer to this question just based on hearing you talk, and I can guess a few things. But how did you come up with the name 17 Hats? What inspired that name?
I wish there was a really good story behind it, and there really isn't. But I wanted a name that kind of tells you what it is about once you get it. And the name was kind of cheeky. I wanted a name that was short and easy to remember.
Yep.
I wanted a name I could pronounce with my accent, and people would not be like, what number was that? And I wanted a name that ideally started with a 1.
Okay.
And the reason for that is that in any alphabetical listing,
sure,
if you start with a number, you'll be at the top. If you start with a 1, you'll definitely be at the top.
Yeah.
We went to a trade show the other day and had a listing of vendors, and sure enough, we were number 1. And those things, do help, especially if there's a lot of vendors at a trade show. So
when I heard the name, I assumed that most entrepreneurs are the ones, or mostly entrepreneurs are using this business. I assumed that an entrepreneur has to wear a lot of different hats. So I assumed, maybe 17 hats is the magic number of hats that an entrepreneur wears, or something like that.
It was just a number we pulled out of the sky. And then, most importantly, of course, the domain name was available.
Wow.
So
okay.
That kind of combined how we ended up with 17 hats. And it is one of those things. Looking back, I think it's been one of our lucky breaks.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed TechCrunch did an article on you guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal, isn't it? I'm not making that up. Like, that's a huge thing.
Yeah, that was helpful. And then Inc. magazine mentioned us. Forbes mentioned us, like just a few weeks ago, actually.
Yeah.
And those things do help. And I think when people realize what it stands for, you always get that chuckle, like, now I get it.
That's really cool. So let me ask you this, and we hit on this a little bit, but I've only got a couple more questions for us to wrap up. But what would you say to someone who is just starting out with big dreams and they want to scale their business? So maybe like this is the person who is doing this part-time, or maybe they just transition full-time, but they have big dreams and they want to go big, they want to scale. What would you tell them?
Yeah, and it kind of goes back, what I said earlier, is that you want to make sure you spend enough time on your business foundations, and that's really figuring out what you want out of it. What is your vision, and then what does that mean? Who are the clients you want to work with? And what is the experience you want to give them? And then if you have the experience, what is that process and how you're going to deliver it? Michael basically says, he calls it the three-legged stool. Like, you need to figure out how you're going to acquire your leads.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You need to figure out how you're going to convert those leads into customers. And you need to then figure out how you're going to fulfill them. And if you can figure out the bones of that before you truly get started, before you get clients, he says the last thing you need is a client. And now that sounds great in theory, right? But we all have bills to pay. So in reality is that we typically start before we're truly ready. But you can figure out this framework before you really kind of get started. Like, how do I really provide this experience?
Right.
And if you sit down, like a lot of small business people have a very hard time selling, right? They don't. Marketing and sales kind of do dirty work.
Why do you think that is?
Well, but I think it goes back to because they don't have clarity of really what they want to offer.
Yep.
Everything has this kind of the sales pitch. Whereas if you know what you offer, what makes you unique, who your ideal client is, then it becomes much more consultative, and the whole thing kind of flows by itself. But if you don't know what makes you unique, if you don't have those keywords, then every new client you don't really know what you're going to be saying. You add a lot of stress to yourself because you don't have a script to go off on.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's that pressure.
That's interesting that you said you don't have a script to go off of. I think a lot of people think a script is a bad idea. They're like, it's going to make me feel robotic. I don't want a script. I want to be normal. I want to be natural.
Yeah. Well, and maybe script is the wrong word, right? Again,
I think it's
framework.
Even just an outline.
Yeah. And it goes back to as simple as Steve Jobs wearing the same thing every single day. I think it's such a key thing is knowing what to do, when to do it.
Right.
Right. And if there are certain objections that you're going to get, right? And if you really thought of this ahead of time, like, will you give a discount? Like, no, we don't give discounts because so and so and so and so, right?
Yeah.
Or yes, we will give a discount if you book today.
Sure.
If you have those decisions pre-made, that stress goes away.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's just a conversation where you're really kind of being consultative.
Sure.
And if you have a good product, it's your responsibility to make sure your customers use it, right, or buy it, because it's going to help them. And that goes back again to having that vision and that clarity of what you want to do. If you don't have that, you can do all these other things, but it's actually going to backfire.
Sure.
That's not a great quote I saw the other day. Like, if you add a system to a or automation to a efficient system, you're going to get a 10x productivity gain, right? However, if you add a system to a thing that is disorganized is going to be 100 times worse.
Right.
So it is just important to, one of my favorite things is you have to prepare for success, right? And you have to kind of sit down and, it's such a great stage to be at that startup phase because you can dream kind of with, a blank mind. And okay, what do I want this to look like? And then just like, okay, start filling it in every step of the way.
Sure.
And it's going to change. Like, don't be like, oh, it's written in stone, because it's not. But it just gives you a much better guide for yourself. Okay, this happens, I'll do this. This happens, I'll do that. And you'll find out that you save so much mental capacity that way. And it's great for your customers. I mean, one other thing that, as a side note, you are the professional, right? Your customers come to you. You need to tell them what you want them to do.
Right. So the context of the last question was for someone just starting out, but would your advice change, or I guess how would your advice change if you were talking to someone who had maybe been doing this for a while, maybe 3 to 5 years or longer, and they had a strong start, but now they've sort of seen things calm down or they've experienced a little bit of decline? What would you tell that person?
It's to take a week off. Right?
That's always a good idea.
Yeah, right? Read the E-Myth.
Sure.
And there's a key phrase in there, right? It's working on your business rather than in. And
I like that.
You need to take that time to work on your business. And obviously each situation is somewhat different, but in most likelihood, if you've been working for a couple of years and things have kind of slowed down in terms of growth, you don't have a acquisition process that is written down. You're kind of hoping that you get clients or referrals or whatever, right? Or you get those in, but you're not converting them as well.
Sure.
Right? So, and if both of those things are fine, then you're going to be in the third category that you're going to be overwhelmed. There's literally like almost nobody that started a business off the proper way. So you're going to be either not getting enough leads, you're not converting them, or you're overwhelmed.
Right.
And then simply say, okay, let's solve one at a time. And where's the bottleneck? How can I solve that bottleneck? And if it's in the last one, then it's organizations and system that will give you a lot of your time back and will allow you to start growing again. If you have a conversion problem, then in all likelihood, or an acquisition problem, in all likelihood, your vision, your messaging is not clear.
Yeah.
Right. Because if your messaging is not clear, what a lot of people do is they try to sell everything to everybody, and they end up selling nothing. Right?
Yeah, we've seen that. That's something, especially I think in the videography industry. Just like, oh, we'll just do video for anyone, whatever it is, wedding, funeral, commercial, corporate, you name it, we're going to do it. And that does tend to spread you thin. At the very least, it convolutes the mission. So, my original question here was, what form of advertising have your customers used over the years that you've heard is most effective? So take the word advertising out. We can say advertising if you want, but what about just client acquisition in general? What's the best thing that you've heard your customers are using that's the most effective? Whether it's advertising, word of mouth, email, what is it?
Well, ironically, it's really the conversion step that the people that do well have nailed down. It is a quick response time. Where too many people seem to drop the ball is like they actually get leads, but they don't respond to them.
Wow.
Or they get an initial lead and they don't keep following up with them. One of the things I always say, and as Michael would say, write this down.
And let me just one thing real quick. When you're talking about Michael, just so our listeners know, you're talking about Michael Gerber, the writer of the E-Myth Revisited.
Yes. Yeah. He's become my mentor and coach. He has been, one of those other lucky breaks is that I happen to.
I just want everybody to take that. That's a huge deal. That is no small thing.
Yeah, and it's one of those lucky things. Like he was on a podcast. I was invited to be on a podcast 1 week later, and I thought, what? We're on the same podcast. I mean, this is a guy his book was a life changer 10 years ago.
Sure.
And 17 Hats was largely inspired the way we build it by the E-Myth. We need to give small business owners a way to put a system in place. So anyway, we were on the podcast, and I thought, you know what? If he was on the same podcast, then at least I could reach out to them. And one of my colleagues reached out. He called back like a few minutes later, and it's been a great experience.
Goodness, that is so cool. That is amazing to hear.
Yeah, so and he happens to live in Southern California, so every other Friday we drive down for 2.5 hours and meet with him for about 3 hours, which is fantastic.
So crazy.
By the way, one of the comment I wanted to make is like your leads or their lives do not evolve around your business. Right? They may have reached out, you may have had an initial conversation with you. They get busy. They want to follow up, but they forget. Stuff happens. The same with getting invoices paid, stuff like that. Like, in most cases, people appreciate the reminder. Right? When you get leads in, it's important to keep following up with them.
Right.
Set up a workflow in like 17 Hats that keeps a nice little like, hey, I'm here if you have any questions. Maybe give some advice like, hey, here's like the 5 things you should know about hiring a video person for your wedding. Stuff like that, just to keep that relationship alive.
Sure.
If you do that, you're going to find your conversion rate increasing a lot. As to which channel works best, that's really business specific, right? There's people in the wedding industry that do very well getting their listing on the Knot.
Right.
There's people that do much better going to Thumbtack and getting a listing on there. Or
right.
One of the things that I think people underestimate these days is the power of networking. There's this, it's kind of a cult, but there's this group called BNI, Business.
I'm in BNI. I'm in BNI.
Then you know what it's like, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'll tell you, my group has been around for 16 years, and 10 of the people that started are still in the group. Just to, as an indicator of how strong it is. It's unbelievable.
Right. And you have seen what it can do for businesses. So, and what I love about BNI is that it's really not very competitive, right? I mean, it's every BNI group has like one type of business in it.
Sure.
But you get a lot of business knowledge from it, but also a lot of referrals. And I've seen businesses really take off after joining groups such as BNI. I would definitely recommend looking it up. I'm not associated with them at all. I have no relationship with them. I've seen our users that use BNI do very well. So wanted to throw that out there as something that actually could work very well for businesses.
Yeah.
And then the thing with all of this is it goes back to making sure you have your foundations right, and your process figured out. I was coaching one of our clients the other day, and she'd run Facebook campaigns, and no result. Then I went to her website. Like, the website doesn't tell me anything. Doesn't have a call to action. Doesn't tell me why I should hire you. Doesn't have anything whatsoever. Right? I can spend $1 million on Facebook and not get any leads. Right? Because where I'm driving them to doesn't do anything. So we changed some things from the website. And so I want to get leads in on your website before we even start doing any advertising. We put the lead capture form right up front on our homepage. We put some actual messaging on our website. And sure enough, the next day she got a lead. The day after that, she got another lead. Right? So now, now we know that process is working. Now we can put money in advertising. So it's very important. We started off with 17 Hats actually. Is that when we first launched, we did a Facebook ad and it didn't do anything, right? And you could think Facebook advertising doesn't work for us.
Sure.
Well, actually, the way we were doing it wasn't working. Then we changed a few things, and then guess what? Facebook advertising did work for us for a while, and then I changed the algorithm, and it kind of went back to square one. But
that's been like this. Yeah, we've heard that a ton. Yeah, that's what they do.
But I think it's important when you test things is to, if it doesn't work, to sit back did it not work because it's just not a worthwhile advertising source for us, or was there anything else in the funnel that broke down? Right?
Sure.
So, when you define that process, very few people actually sit down and define their whole funnel, like all the kind of where do people hear about me, and then when you talk about client experience, it starts when they first hear about you. Right? It doesn't start when they book you or when they contact you. No, it starts when they hear about you from a friend or an ad or whatever. That's where their experience starts. Okay, and when that happens, let's say, hear about you from a friend, what is the thing that you want them to remember, right? Because that's the wording that you have to give that friend that was your client.
Wow.
Right? So it's a lot to take in. It's, this is why I say take a week off and to really work on your business. It's something that evolves, but it's important to take that time to work on your business, right? Because we are so busy, non-stop in the trenches, we're doing, which is fantastic. But you need to schedule in time on your calendar, and it can be, every Friday afternoon, you block off like, hey, I'm going to go to a Starbucks and I'm going to see what I can fix forever in my business. What is a problem that I need to fix forever in my business? Yeah. It can be once a week, it can be once a month, but you do need to make sure you take that time, because if you don't, you'll never get where you want to go.
Wow, it's phenomenal. Everybody, Donavan Janus, founder, CEO of 17 Hats. Listen, this has been phenomenal. I think before I even publish this, I'm going to go listen to it 2 or 3 times and decide if I still want to offer this for free or not. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. It is really, this is unbelievable. I mean, and we had a guest on here last week and we talked about this, but the whole culture and the availability of podcasts is unreal. Could you imagine, like, if you would have had a resource like podcasts in the late 90s?
Yeah, the education today is fantastic. I mean, podcasts are wonderful, especially if you have long drives.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, thanks again so much for being on here. This is one of our most unbelievable episodes, I can already tell you. I mean, it's really awesome.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to be on there. Thank you for using 17 Hats.
Absolutely. And everybody, if you want to go visit the website, it is 17hats.com. We actually have an offer that 17 Hats generously give out to the listeners of Full-Time Hustle. If you go to 17hats.com /card/full-time hustle, you can get 10% off your first subscription and a free 17-day trial, which is awesome. So go check it out. 17 Hats. It can be life-changing. Donovan Janus, do you have a website, Donovan? Other than 17 Hats, you have a website for you?
I do not.
You should have a website, because I think, man, I could just listen to you, man. Seriously.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
It's really awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on here, and we look forward to future opportunities of communication with you, man.
Same here. Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it. Donovan Janus.
Wow. That's awesome.
Super, really amazingly dynamic guy.
Yeah. I think you had a lot of fun on that conversation.
I had a blast. Seriously, we're approaching an hour on this podcast. I could have talked to him for 2 or 3 hours just about like, well, what about this? Well, here's this scenario. What do you think about that? And I think he would answer. He wants to, it's just very obvious to me that he wants to invest in the lives of entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And I just love that quality about people. I love it.
Yeah. And that's really reflective in 17 Hats as a whole. It reflects that part of his personality because they really listen to the customer. I know that if I want to recommend a new addition to the software, there's a way to do it. It's a very easy way. And it's just great to feel listened to.
Tell me if I'm wrong here, but they've actually taken things that you have suggested, and eventually those things have been implemented, right?
Usually by the time, I'm not like a suggester. Right. It's not my personality. But by the time I'm like, yeah, we need this. I look and there's like all these other people that said the same thing, and it's already in the movements. Yeah. And so I just love that. Like, I love that the people can be heard. Absolutely. Well, here's the thing. We're not going to advertise anybody on our podcast that we don't love and that we're not fully behind. And that's why you hear about 17 Hats every week, is because we believe in them and we know that they're awesome. So, well, do me a favor. If you like what you hear on the show, go subscribe to our podcast. You may already be a subscriber. If you're a subscriber, we really appreciate that. The other thing you can do to help us out is give us reviews and share the podcast. This is something that we really feel like can be, very impactful on not just the creative community, but just to anybody that is working for themselves. That's who this podcast is for. If you're someone and you own your business and you want to take it to the next level, that's who we're here for. So have a great day. We'll catch you next time. Full-Time Hustle.
Full Time Hustle is a Fowler Studios production. It's produced and written by Josh and Susan Fowler with help from Joellen Anklem. Our theme music is composed by Valdi Sabev and can be licensed among many other great song titles at soundstripe.com.